request our next presenter, Chandralekha, who's going to talk about the impact of AI in code documentation. Chandralekha is a seasoned technical writer. She's currently working as principal technical writer with Red Hat. She has over 14 years of experience in the technical documentation field. And outside work, she is also having a certification on DELF A1, which is awarded by French Ministry of Education for the French language for non-native speakers. So on that cue, I would request Chandralekha to take over. Over to you, Chandralekha.
Thank you, Sumit, for a wonderful introduction. And I've just shared my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So let me go to slideshow. Yeah. So this is the agenda for today. We are going to talk about code documentation and why to document code, its value, what is the current scenario, and we are going to explore certain AI tools, the implementation challenges, and how the future of code documentation looks like. So yeah, so what is code documentation? Uh, we are all product documentation experts, and we write documents regarding the function and usage of products. But what actually is this code documentation? We know documentation plays an important role in software programming, and programmers write comments in source code to make their code easier for both themselves and for others to understand. To save time in creating documentation, template-based approaches are often used to help developers annotate their source code. So there are a lot of tools like Sphinx, Wiki.js, Gitbook, and Doxygen, and these tools use tags to annotate their code, such as params and functions. And with these tags, automatically the documentation is generated. And this approach helps developers to create documentation for their fellow developers for reusing and extending the code. So by code documentation, I mean the code comments that I wrote write within the code, and it can be your README files, and it can be your changelog files that is accompanying along with the code that you're shipping to your customer. Okay. So why to document code? So is it really a topic of discussion? So this is something developers write for their own understanding. So why should I actually know about this, and why? So what is the actual function of, or why should I write a why should I document a code? So sorry, is my screen still visible? Can somebody confirm?
Yes.
Yeah. So what is the value proposition of documentation? So it is crucial to communicate to practitioners the value that documentation generates at different levels of the organization. So the code documentation makes software projects more scalable. So it's not only with respect to AI and AI models. The entire software project industry so it is related to all the software projects, and the code documentation makes it more scalable, and it strengthens team coherence, and it builds institutional knowledge and guides in decision making process, and it enables easy backtracking of errors and reduces technical debt in the long run. And documentation makes software projects and the models more robust by helping teams identify gaps and potential biases. So, and finally, it also helps build trust with users and consumers, and by enhancing the understanding of the models. So, we know. So now we understand. Okay, so code documentation, the few lines that they write is really important because it is having lot many advantages. So, what is the value of code documentation, and what actually it is going to help us with? So code documentation is meaningful both as an artifact and as well as a process, because it is proposed as a way to improve operational transparency. I call it an artifact because it communicates the underworkings of the development process, decisions, and impacts to diverse audience. And it serves as a process because it helps technology builders identify potential harms throughout the life cycle. And also, it could benefit teams by reducing technical debt, preserving institutional knowledge, and improving communication and enabling reproducibility. So it's always a software program you write somewhere and you may use many times. So irrespective of your platform, irrespective of the environment that you create, you can reproduce the code anywhere. And through documentation, it makes it very easy for you to reproduce and to improve your communication within teams. So now we know what is code documentation, why we have to document, and what's the value it's going to create. So what is the current scenario? Do we have code documentation? Is it very prevalent? Do we do it diligently? What are the common questions that are asked by developers? So is it my code self-explanatory? So when I talk to my developers, they say, so you just read, you just read through the code, you'll understand. So for them, each and every person born in this world are developers, coders, they can understand code. So that is one thing that is stopping them from writing documentation for their code. And why do you have to take time to write? Oh, so from the Tom and Jerry, you can understand. So writing code, they're always there. But when you say document, it's always the back step. They just run away and they say, oh, I don't have time and I'm busy. And is it a standard practice? Many people ask me, oh, so should we really do it? Are there any standard to document the code? And for smaller organizations, if you see, there are very few resources available and there are many projects and there is a resource crunch. So really getting time, developers getting time to document their code, it's really very challenging. But for bigger organizations, if you see, they have an extensive list of fast evolving products. So they themselves don't know which product is going to substantialize and which is going to grow, so that they can put their entire focus on that particular project. And so thus getting into that one particular project becomes very challenging. So that's why I had an opportunity to meet a CEO of a startup, and he told me that he felt the pressure to prioritize building products over documentation and described it as a luxury. So it is a luxury for them to have a document because they every time they are involved in creating it, marketing it, selling their products. So for them it is called a luxury. So now what do? So we know code documentation is important. We have to do it. It has a lot of benefits, but we don't do it. So how are we going to address this challenge? So to address this challenge, we are going to leverage AI, and we have a lot of more than 70 tools available in the market, which is going to help us in code documentation. Out of them, I've picked 4 because I've personally tested, tried them, used them, and I found these 4 to be very useful. And I've categorized them into 2 different categories. One is the open source and other is the commercial. So the Mintlify and the Code Llama, the first 2 AI tools are the open source models, and the Copilot and DocWriter are commercial versions. So let's jump in so we will briefly give a walkthrough of each of the tools. So what is Mintlify? Mintlify is an open source automated documentation tool that help developers generate and maintain documentation from their code. And it can automatically generate API documents, user guides, tutorials, and it can also keep your documentation up to date as your code changes. So I want to give a small glimpse of how it is. And please let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I will play it from the beginning. So this is exactly my VS Code editor. Just I think Dilijit has already shown us. Just adding it as like extension or plugin. I've added Mintlify, and when I select Mintlify, it is it is showing me all the doc strings that I can use, and I go to auto mode, and I just have a small piece of code, and in my editor, I just select this and I say generate docs. And what it does in no time, it gives me, so I'm going to play it again. Yeah. So this is a small script file that I wrote for cleaning my Git repository. So I just select the code and say generate docs, and in no time, Mintlify generates documentation for me. And these are this is a very small program, so it's like it just explains, okay, this shell script, it is the purpose of it and how it starts and what are the parameters involved. So this is Mintlify. And next we have CodeLlama. Meta's CodeLlama is a strong competitor as an AI programming tool. It can help with code completion as well. So it is not only going to give you documents, it is going to help in code completion. And it is a very important tool with regards to AI programming. And it is trained in more than 100 GB of data. It's very robust. It can help you with code completion, and it can write human readable comments in your code, and it can even generate code for us. So we'll see how does this help us. And so in a similar way, so I'm just writing create a Python 3 function for subtraction of two numbers. Okay, so this is a very small piece of program, and as it's CodeLlama, it is going to write code for me. And when I say, it has two options, accept word, and when I say accept, yeah, my program is the code is there. I just select the code, and then I say generate docs. Yeah, and you see this. So for one, maybe 2 lines of code, it gives me a paragraph saying that what is this function. There are 2 parameters, num1 and num2, and it explains about the logic and what it is going to function perform. And in this case, it gives an example also. See, it's returning the result if it's 10 minus 5, which is 5. So this is CodeLlama. So I don't have a piece of code also. So it is writing a code for me, and it is explaining about the code also for me. Okay, and this is open source. And next tool that we are going to see is Copilot. I think there will extensive discussion about Copilot. Copilot analyzes the context in the file that you're editing as well as the related files and offers suggestions within your text editor. And it is powered by generative AI model developed by GitHub, OpenAI, and Microsoft. And it is trained in all the languages that appear in public repositories. So you can see a similar interface because I've integrated in my IDE, VS Code. So what I do is I just write just a statement saying write a program for subtraction of two numbers in Python, and the Git Copilot, you say it's accept discard, and I say accept, and yeah, so the code is generated, and then I select the code and then say create a document for me for this code, and here it is. The code along with the code comments is generated and it's ready for me to use. So last but not the least, we have DocuWriter.ai. DocuWriter is again a AI-powered platform transforming the software development process. It auto-generates precise code documentation, test suites, code optimizations, and it offers code language converters, allowing seamless migration between different programming languages. And if you see, it has Swagger API documentation generator, and it can get UML diagrams for you, and this is the interface. The only drawback I see with DocuWriter is you have to upload your entire code to them, the code base to them. It's not like you can select and use just like other code documentation generators. And you see this carefully. So this is the interface I was talking about. You say so single or multiple flights, and you have to upload them, the entire. See, I select my file and say generate, and it process. And you see this for a 2-line shell script, I have an entire documentation generated in no time with overview, index, prerequisites, and all the default things that I need for a document. So if you see, yeah, so this is the output generated generated by DocuWriter, and you see this, it gives me an MD file also. For many of the open source projects are still in the initial phases, and it's not reaching people because it doesn't have proper documentation, and people don't understand so that they can contribute for the project. So this is a very useful tool wherein it gives you all the necessary details, and you can just upload to your repo, and yeah, this gives you an MD file also, and this is the PDF and the MD file that you can use. All right. So now we have our code documentation generator. So can I go ahead and use it? And from the previous sessions, I came across a few questions like, can I go and use these tools in my product or to my day-to-day work? And should I just start using it? So before we start using, let's jump on to the implementation challenges, or what are the things I have to know before getting into the usage of AI tools. Artificial intelligence has revolutionized various areas of software development, including code documentation. While AI tools can offer significant benefits in automating the documentation process, there are several pitfalls associated with relying solely on AI for this task. So what are the pitfalls? So the first pitfall I would say is lack of contextual understanding. AI tools may struggle to grasp the full context and intent behind the code, leading to inaccuracies or incomplete documentation. Without a deep understanding of the code base, AI-generated documentation may be misleading, or it can fail to capture the crucial nuances. Because you see, it is going to make you give you a document for a piece of code, and all these pieces and bits have to be integrated somewhere, right? So it is failing to do that. The full intent is lost. And the next one is over reliance on automation. Relying too heavily on AI for code documentation can result in lack of human oversight. Developers can become complacent and trust the AI generated documentation too much without critically evaluating its accuracy, potentially leading to errors or misunderstanding in the code base. So this induces individuals to heavily depend on AI, leading to diminished work ethic and increased complacency. So the third limitation I see is customization and flexibility. In the interface, I think you remember that either it is all or none. So this rule is continuously applied. You have to accept the entire code or discard, and it regenerates for you. So you cannot take pieces and you cannot customize it. It often provides standardized templates for documentation, limiting the ability to customize the format or style according to specific project requirements. So this lack of flexibility can hinder communication within development teams, and it obstructs the clarity of the documentation. And the next challenge I see is the maintenance challenge. As code evolves over time, maintaining accurate and up-to-date documentation is crucial. AI tools may struggle to adapt to changes in the code base, leading to outdated or incorrect documentation. My code is not going to cannot remain throughout it cannot be the same throughout the project, right? So it keeps changing, and according to the changes, the documentation has to be updated, and none of the AI tool is able to do that. This creates confusion among developers, and it impedes the overall development process. And the next implement challenge, or the major concern that I see, is the security and privacy concern. And when using AI tools for code documentation, there are potential security and privacy risks to consider. Confidential information embedded in the code could be accidentally exposed through automated documentation process, posing a threat to data security. A significant security issue arises when the AI tool you're utilizing has the potential to unlawfully employ or code or data without your knowledge or consent. See, you are so happy that you're seeing document before you because it has picked it from somebody, and now if you feed data from you, and it is going to be visible to some others without even your consent, and you'll not even know that the code logics and the private things that are hidden in the code will be exposed even without your knowledge, and it becomes a great threat to data security. And so this has to be considered before using AI tools. And as Smita was talking, you have to be very careful handling sensitive data, and you're so happy seeing the document, but your code logic is exposed, and that is one thing to consider, and you should be very aware of. And the next limitation I see is responsible AI is a socio-technical concept, and ML is a relatively new field, and it has focused a lot on innovation rather than the rigor on how it's built. The ethics and building AI responsibility is still not in the vernacular of a typical AI practice. But in recent years, numerous organizations, both in public and private spheres, have taken initiatives to establish ethical principles and guidelines for artificial intelligence technologies. Among the set of principles emerging in current AI ethical guidelines, one of the most prevalent value mentioned is transparency, which relates to transparency of algorithms, transparency of data used to build AI systems and their governance. So increasing transparency in machine learning algorithms can help diverse stakeholders such as policymakers, auditors, developers, and consumers to understand how the technology works, how to perform meaningful audits, and identify sources of harm. So we know there are a lot of implementation challenges. So there may be a question. So now tell me if I can use it or not. So should I? So you have shown me a lot of AI tools. You have grabbed my attention. You have given food for thought, and you have given me a lot of options. And now you say don't use it. So what do I do? So in conclusion, I would say while AI can streamline code documentation processes, it is essential for developers to be aware the pitfalls associated with relying solely on AI for this task. So by combining AI tools with human oversight and critical evaluation, developers can leverage the benefit of automation while ensuring accurate and comprehensive code documentation. And I call developers because it can be code developers, it can be user assistant developers, information engineers, docs as code people, and we too deal with code day in day out. So I call everybody as developers. So what is the future of code documentations, how it's going to look like? And for people who were in testing, I think you would know this triangle. This is called the TDD approach, test driven approach. So how the applications are developed is they start with unit based development and documentation. So now if you see all the AI tools, they're giving unit based the code selected and the document being provided. It's not able to even go into modular level. So so when unit level documentation is generated, onto that we have to go for module based development or service level development documentation, and then we will have to go to integration to the CI/CD pipeline, and we call it upsert in databases. What is upsert is, if there is code documentation, then you have to update it, and if it is not, then you have to generate automatically an insert. So your update plus insert becomes upsert, and this has to be a part of CI/CD pipeline, and this has to be auto-generated so that your open source projects can be built easily in the pipeline without any hindrance. And this need not be manual; it can be automated also. So that's the future. And the current scenario, if you see, end-to-end development is done, and then our product documentation comes in on the top of the pyramid, but it has to start hand in hand. So how actually the current scenario is, we develop the product and then go for end user documentation or code documentation. But the future scenario is, you write the documentation, you write the use case, and you write the test cases, and then develop a product, so that the failing test cases can be addressed through your code, and then you come back with the working code as well as the code documentation. So that should be our future of code documentation. And so I want to conclude saying that it may not be overwhelming, as you see, and for every time we are given a piece of code, we try to understand them, so we can leverage all these AI tools for understanding how it works and the logic behind and all the functionalities, but be very aware of the potential threats and the security concerns and use it wisely. So that's all I had for today. Thank you so much for listening to me. And any questions?
Yes. Thank you, Chandralekha. I hope you can all hear me well.
Yes, Sumit.
All right. Okay. So, thank you, Chandralekha, once again for this awesome session. The chat is really buzzing with comments and questions. So, I have noted couple of questions. In the interest of time, we'll go with couple of them. So, we have a first question from Komalreet. She says, Chandralekha, but do technical writers dedicatedly do this, or as an additional project apart from product documentation? I mean to say, she's talking towards code documentation.
Okay. So yes, we so if you are in Docs code, you definitely do it, because we have ASCII doc, and I do it in a day in and day out. but it is based on the company that you're in, or the language that you use and the tool that you're using. It differs because our documentation is fully into IDE, and all these tools that I was explaining about, it can be integrated with your IDE. So yeah, it truly depends.
Okay, thank you for that. There's another question from Ashish. He says, are you using this extension in your job?
Yes, yes. Just for learning, I don't integrate it with my IDE, and I don't use
Hmm.
it to expose my code logics and all. So whenever there is a code snippet that I would understand, I definitely use it to learn. And as Gaurav was saying, learning a coding language is very helpful. And this AI tools is going to help us with that learning curve, and it speeds up the process, and it makes it easy for us. So that's the basic idea.
Awesome. Okay. There's another one from Shweta. She says, will these tools have any issue with privacy as we cannot test internal codes with an open source tool?
Yes, yes, definitely. You have to go through your company's compliance and policies, and this you have to be very careful. Just as I explained, it has a major security threat, and you're not supposed to use them in your company confidential information. Use it only for your learning. Just as you use Google or ChatGPT, use it for your learning. Do not integrate it with your company data.
Okay. Okay, I think this another question is related to one of the tools that you were talking about docwriter.ai. So does docwriter.ai makes us volatile sorry, not volatile, violate privacy as they need our entire code?
Yes, yes, exactly. I don't encourage you to use DocuWriter because it you have to upload your entire code base to it if you want a proper documentation. Yes, the document looks very lucrative, and it's very good, and it's to the point, but it is not for the piece of code. It is for the entire code base. So your entire file you have to upload, and that is a potential threat. So yeah, that is seriously
Okay.
one thing that you have to know before using it.
Okay. The last one for today. Can we upload our code in any open source tools? I think the previous one was talking about testing. This one is about uploading. So yeah.
Right, right. You can. If there is no company critical information, and it's your own project, and you don't have any secret credentials that you can share, and it's if it's your open source project that you want people to come and contribute, then this is the best one. So go for it.
All right. I think we have covered all the questions, and we still have few more minutes to go. So if anybody wants to unmute and go ahead with any other questions that we have not able to cover, we have a minute or two to ask them.
Yes, please go ahead, and thank you so much for listening to me so patiently. I know it has been quite a session from morning, and that's why I try to make it very short. And if at all you have any questions, you can reach me through LinkedIn or the AI WhatsApp group. I'm available anytime, and yeah, we can learn together. You're
Okay.
always welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Chandralekha. With that, I'll hand it over to Christine.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chandralekha, again. We greatly appreciate your presentation on the impact of AI in code documentation, your insight into using AI tools to enhance code documentation, and your practical advice on overcoming implementing challenges were truly enlightening. And your expertise has been truly invaluable to us. So now I'm glad to welcome our last speaker of the day, Vinay Anthony Paipali. Vinay is a senior manager of the documentation at Zanotti with over